Hi everyone, I'm Miss Martine. As some of you young chefs already know, we have a bunch of videos on our FoodPrints website that show you how to do specific things in the kitchen, like how to cut an onion or how to use a can opener. We call these our kitchen skills videos, and you should definitely watch them before starting any recipe. Also, during our recipe videos, you might see this pop up. This symbol is a reminder to watch the skills videos first so that you know how to safely do whatever the teacher is doing on the screen. And one last important thing to remember, you should only do these recipes if you have a grown-up around who's ready to help you and keep you safe. And that's it. Now, have fun cooking.
Hi friends, I'm Miss Fineran, a teacher with the FoodPrints program. Today's lesson is about making a simple tomato soup. Once the soup is made, it's not only delicious, but it can also be used as a base for a variety of different soups and other recipes. Okay, so let's make some tomato soup. The first thing we want to do is read the recipe all the way through. That way we can make a really good plan of action. So the next thing we want to think about is our mise en place. And what is mise en place? Mise en place is a French term that means to have everything in order. And that's what we have here today for our recipe. We have our ladle and spoons, can openers, our knives. I actually use a spatula, my cutting board, measuring spoons. I have my salt and pepper and olive oil, the spices I'm going to use today, tomatoes, and my beautiful vegetables. And here we have our cook stove all cleared off. We have our pot that we're going to use and our blender. So now whether you get your vegetables from the market or from the garden, they need to be washed before we get using them. So while I wash these vegetables, you're going to meet some of my friends and see how they're washing their vegetables at home.
You told me.
Right, and when you're done scrubbing, then you're going to rinse it again. You're right.
But I rinsed it already 2 times.
Okay, great. So just drop it in one more time, and then we'll put it on the towel. Good job. Would you like to wash some celery?
Yeah.
Okay, please pick a stalk of celery.
A good movie night is a good movie. What?
Okay, can you give it a dip when you're done brushing? Great job.
Our friends did a great job of washing their vegetables. So now mine are all washed as well. And I'm going to start with my onions because onions, they need a long time to cook to develop a really nice flavor. There's a lot of sugar that are in onions, and when they cook, that caramelizes. So we're going to take our onion, we're going to use our claw position, and I'm just going to take off a little bit of the top. Now onions, when they're wet especially, are kind of slippery, so you've got to make sure you're holding on to it tight. Then I'm going to take a little bit off of the bottom area, the root. So these pieces I'm going to put into my bowl over here. That's my scrap bowl, and I'll get to that later. So now I'm just going to peel off the rest of this. Okay, and I'm going to cut this onion in half. So it's nice to have a flat spot so it doesn't wobble. I'm going to use my claw position and push down. Now to make it more stable, I'm going to lay them flat on the cutting board. At this point, I am going to notice if maybe on this side it's better. Look, you can see the root here. That holds the onion together while we're cutting it. So I'm going to put that part down, kind of to my left, and I am going to use my claw and take the tip of my knife and push in with the tip and down. I'm not cutting the onion all the way through because I want it to stay together. I'm going to just do a couple of cuts here. Then I'm going to turn it, and I'm still going to use my claw, pinky on one side and thumb on the other, and those other fingers straight up and down. So I'm going to use my fingers to guide my knife. Okay, so now that our onions are finished, we're going to get things started on the cook stove. So I'm going to get my oil and my tablespoon measure. I'm going to put them here because I need to move my pot closer to the blender that I'm going to need when I'm done with the soup. All right, so now I need to measure 5 tablespoons of olive oil. This is a fun job for friends that are working together. So I need 5 tablespoons. And to remind us how to measure correctly, let's check in with some friends.
We're going to pour 5 tablespoons of olive oil into this pot. I'll start and pour 2 and then have you pour the rest. So what we want to do is make sure we're pouring a nice, even tablespoon. Throw that in there. There's 1. And the next, there's 2. Okay, now let's switch.
3. 4.
Perfect.
5.
Great.
We have successfully poured 5 tablespoons of olive oil into the pot.
Once the oil is in the pot, I'm going to turn the heat to low-medium. Every stove is a little different, so make sure a grown-up is there to help you turn on the stove. All right, now while the oil is heating up in your pot, it's a good time to cut the second onion. I've already cut mine earlier, so you friends at home should go ahead and cut your second onion now. When we're cooking, we use all of our senses to tell us about what we touch, taste, smell, hear, and see. For example, I'll know if the oil is hot enough when I can see it's making tiny ripples in the pot. Or I'll know it's too hot if I can see the pot smoking. So let's take a look at our pot. The oil looks about right. We'll do a second test, this time using our ears. We'll drop in 1 slice of onion, and if we hear a sizzle sound, then we'll know the oil is hot enough. I hear the sizzle. Do you hear it? That means our oil is ready for us to add the onions. When adding anything to a hot pot, we always need to remember to be as safe as possible. So when adding these onions, we're not going to use our hands. We are going to use a spoon, and we're not going to pull these onions toward us because that could cause the oil to splash up upon us. Instead, we're going to use a spoon and push them away from us into the pot. Okay, now I'm going to give that a stir. Good. So I stirred it around to make sure the onions are well coated in oil. You can stir for 10 seconds if you'd like. Now it's time for the carrots. So if your carrot has a green top like these do, we're just going to cut off that top and maybe a teeny bit of the root. And we're going to set this aside. All right, here's another one. I'll put that over here. All right, to get the carrots down to size, we can either slice them, peel them, or shred them. So let's check in with some of our friends to see the differences.
My name is Ari, and I'm going to be cutting, grating, and peeling carrots. And that's how you cut, grate, and peel carrots.
Thanks, friends. Now whether you slice or peel or shred the carrot is up to you. The important thing to remember is that the smaller pieces of carrot are going to cook more quickly, whereas the bigger pieces of carrots will cook slower. For our recipe today, I'm going to use sliced carrots because they cook slower. So let's get them cut, and I'll put them in a bowl until we need them. go check on our onions again. As we give our onions a stir, remember to use our senses. And what do we see and hear? If the onions are still white and they're not sizzling, we can turn up the heat a bit. But if the onions already look tan in color and they're starting to brown on the edges, that's okay. But I will reduce the heat to slow down the cooking. So next up is our celery, which the kids in my class love to cut. If your celery has lots of leaves on it, you can just tear them off and set them aside for the moment. We'll come back to those later. All right, celery can be challenging to cut, so it might be helpful to have an adult cut it in half first, so then our young chefs can take over. Right, I find putting the celery down on the cutting board, and our friends are going to use a sawing motion, going back and forth. They like to use their sense of hearing when they can hear it, the knife crunching the celery as they cut it into small pieces. It smells really good. Then, when we're done getting all of our celery chopped up, we are going to go back and check on our onions and see how they're doing. I love that sound. Okay, we're going to get this off to the side, put it in the bowl with our carrots, and we're going to check on those onions. Oh, they smell really yummy. In fact, I think my daughter's going to be in here pretty soon to ask if she can eat them. Okay, so our onions have changed from a tan color and are brown on the edges, just like we want them. So now we're going to add our celery and carrots. Okay, we're going to give them a stir around too. And you can count to 10 again. All right, we've got our carrots, the celery in there, everything is looking great. So at this point, it's time to add some of our spices. Now every family might have different flavors they might like to add, so while I add my spices, let's see what your spices are going to be.
We're going to be adding basil and oregano and some red chili flakes. All right, so we're going to start with a teaspoon. We're going to do a teaspoon of the basil. You're going to help me, you're just going to shake it into the spoon. You want to do it over the pot so you don't lose any of your good spices. And we'll spread that around. Okay, stir that in a little bit. Oregano. Okay, we'll do a teaspoon of that. Careful because the pan is hot. And we're also going to do red pepper flakes. These are a little bit spicy, so I like to just put them in my hand. You'll put those in and stir them in. And that's how you add spices to the onions for tomato soup.
Good suggestions, everyone. Now, we'll give everything a stir, and then we'll set our heat to medium and let it cook for a bit. For this recipe, we're going to use 2 cloves of garlic. Now, this is a bulb of garlic, and these individual pieces are called cloves. So we're going to take those off of there. And then we're going to first have to peel them. We don't want the skin on it. So we're going to peel off the skin. And fresh garlic, when it's right from the farmer's market or from our garden, it's really sticky. And it smells incredible. So we're going to take all that skin off. Then we're going to chop it up into little bits. Sometimes if you just flatten it with a knife, the side of a knife, so look how much easier that comes off. Okay, so your young friends can cut the garlic with a butter knife. I'm just going to mince it with my knife here. And I'm going to use my claw still, even when I'm using garlic. My fingers are all tucked up, leaning up against the knife, so they're protected and safe. All right, and I'm just going to chop that up. Okay. Okay, now we're going to add our garlic. right, next we have our celery leaves here. You can use a knife to chop these up. I just like to tear them up with my fingers. It's great practice for the little ones to use scissors to cut them up. And now we're going to throw these into our pot as well. All right, so now we have our bowl of scraps to take care of. These scraps, the onion peels and carrot tops, I can actually use them for later. They're not trash or compost. So what I do is I'm going to put them in a plastic bag and put them in the freezer. When I have a full bag, I can make vegetable stock with that. Now, we have our cans of tomatoes here, and these need to be opened. So let's check out with some friends and see how they're opening them at home.
Before you open any cans, you want to use a damp cloth just to wipe the top off to get any dust or dirt off from the top so that it doesn't go down into the tomatoes. And then we're going to be using a can opener to open our can of tomatoes. So you see how the can opener opens up, and there's two round things with ridges there, and you're going to clamp that onto the side of the can, and you're going to squeeze really hard till you hear it pop. Yep. And then you're going to twist. You're going to keep this squeeze together, and you're going to twist all the way around the top of the can. And sometimes the lid is down in, and you want to get a parent to help you with this because the lid is very sharp. So you just want to put your fingers on the lid very carefully. Make sure you have an adult do this part. You're just going to twist the lid off. You can put that to the side, and that's how you open a can with a can opener.
I've cleaned the tops of my two cans and opened them as well. So now we're going to add them to our pot. We're going to carefully pour in our tomatoes, pouring away from our bodies. All right, I'm going to do the same with our second can. Carefully pouring in so it doesn't splash on myself. Once you've poured the tomatoes in, fill up each can with water and add that water to the pot as well. Always pouring away from your face. Then use your spatula or a large spoon or some other utensil to give the pot a good stir. At this point, we leave our soup to simmer for at least 30 minutes so that the flavors can all work together. So I'm going to clean up a little bit around here, and after 30 minutes, we'll come back to see if it's ready. Our soup has now cooked for 30 minutes. So now I'm going to test one of the vegetables to see if it's soft and tender. If it is, our soup is ready. Oh, look, nice and tender, perfect. Okay, this is a good time to add any extra flavors that you might want. For example, if you have fresh basil or pesto, that is a great addition. I'm going to add a little pepper and a few pinches of salt and a teaspoon of sugar to balance out the acidity of the tomatoes. Pepper, a little bit of salt, and just a little bit of sugar. Okay, you gotta stir. The last step gives our soup a creamy texture. And to do this, we're going to use a blender. Now, as you know, we expect that you are working with adults for most of our recipes, especially those involving the stove. Well, the same is true when working with a blender. Make sure you have an adult with you. The best approach to blending our soup is to first bring our blender close to the pot like this. Then using our ladle, we transfer 2 or 3 scoops of the soup into the blender. If you are blending hot soup, don't fill the blender any higher than halfway, because blending hot soup can cause the lid to pop off when it's blending. After I put the lid back on, I also like to place a towel over the top before turning on the blender. Once you're all set, push the button and blend. All right, friends, that's it. Here we have our yummy tomato soup. Look at that. I can't wait. What do you like with your tomato soup? I think I'm gonna have to make a grilled cheese to have with my tomato soup. All right. All right, that's it, friends. Thanks for spending your time with me today. And don't forget to check out our other FoodPrints recipes and videos. Enjoy.